Today's guest is Benjamin Holmgren. He's a contract consultant at Kestaa. All right, Benjamin, thank you for coming on the show.
You got it, Tess. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. I mean, you've got a pretty deep background in the sort of contracting side of things. Was that introduced to you at a young age?
It's all I've ever known from 12 years old. My brother had been working for this guy uh, on like his farm, and one day my brother woke up sick, and so the guy's like, "Hey, can you come work for me?" And I ended up driving his old like 60s international dump truck at 12 years old, like loading stumps to a burn pile and uh, that sort of thing. And then basically every role I've had has been either working directly in construction or selling into construction. The sales role that I had is I was working for commercial concrete contractors and selling to them. So it was everything I've ever done is all construction related.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and then you have sort of selling into construction. So obviously being inside the industry helps you to understand, selling into it. But what did you learn there by selling into the industry?
That's actually a really good question. I have learned that, like, specifically when I was in the sales role, and my job was go out and sell to these commercial concrete contractors. I went to like 35 states and like I was constantly on the road, driving, flying around, and going to all these different sites. And it didn't matter if I was in Iowa, California, Texas. There's some things that are always the same, which is like this is a spit and a handshake kind of industry by and large. And even though obviously contracts and there's courts and back and forth that people wind up in, there's still like this. I've seen it on the ground. There's so much uh, like just reputation matters more than anything. And if you can shake somebody's hand, look them in the eyeball, and do right by them, like the world's your oyster. So that's like one of the key things that I learned. And I don't know that I knew that in that role at that time, but it's like in reflecting on it, it's like, man, that's one thing about this industry that maybe is might not be as true for others. It's like this is your word is your bond here.
Yeah, and then and basically you're not scheduling, right? You're just showing up. Is that the case in these job sites? Are you
Yeah, I mean,
scheduling? What are you doing?
yeah, this was 6 years ago. So a lot of times it'd be like I'd schedule a few appointments. I'd have my couple appointments. I gotta go to Des Moines, Iowa, and I'll go meet with a few people, and then I'd swing into some other offices or whatever. So it wasn't like I was just trampling onto some data center job site and trying to get a meeting. But uh, yeah, that's find my way in. That's the business of selling.
There you go. And I think you've owned and operated some of these things. What did you learn there?
In owning.
Yeah.
Um, so for clarity's sake, and for anybody listening, like I've not owned my own construction company, so that's like that automatically puts me at a different in a different strata than the people who are out doing it every day. And I don't pretend to. I'm not like trying to fake it or anything. I've been the manager at three different construction companies or subcontractors, and like been the guy in charge, second in command, but I've not gone and done it myself. What that's lent me though is I suppose a different perspective, because I haven't had the necessarily the weight of payroll on my shoulders like an owner might, but uh, but all many of the responsibilities, like go get the customers, go bid the projects, go close the projects, execute the projects, close them out, and one of the it's kind of similar to like the takeaway from that is kind of similar to what I shared before. It's like there's a there's principles that apply it doesn't matter what business you're in, and and I I just have gained a huge appreciation for the principles behind doing doing good work, doing quality work, communication, like many of this typical stuff that you and I see on LinkedIn all the time. That's there's a lot of truth to it.
Yeah, for sure. And what are you focused on now?
So a couple months ago I went on my own and I started a company called Kestaa, and Kesta is a kind of a nod to my Scandinavian heritage. And Kesta is a Finnish word meaning long term or for the long haul. And what I aim to do, what I plan to do, what I'm working with customers on right now is helping their business be around for the long haul. And what a lot of that looks like right now is helping level up their ability to track projects, track costs, and how those numbers then inform future estimates. And so a lot of it is let's get in, my work with customers is go in, audit their systems, look at everything that's going on, how they're tracking things, what they're not tracking, and then help their team start tracking more of the right stuff, and then turn that data that they're tracking every day into information that they can use to bid future projects. So a lot of it's just very practical type stuff that I'm going in and helping folks on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people that reach out to you are a little bit more on the growth-minded side, but I mean, a lot of this is change management. How do you approach that?
That's one of the things that I would like to think I have a good a head start on because I'm good with people. Like that's my one I suppose my one quality is like I'm good with people. I can show up to a job shack or a conference room or a one-on-one meeting at a coffee shop and I can connect with people quite well. And what I've noticed about change management as you call it or we're going to introduce this new system or now guys I want you to start tracking all this stuff on your iPad instead of on paper. A lot of that is understanding where people are now. With if you have a 62-year-old superintendent that doesn't, I don't do iPads, you know, I don't even have a smartphone, and meeting them where they are with some empathy rather than with the iron fist. And I've found there's a tremendous amount of traction that leaders can make, and maybe somebody like me who's coming in to help make that change, you could just make a ton of progress by getting people on your team first rather than by by being the enemy, by being the opposition and saying like, "Hey, this is what we're doing starting now and you're fired if you don't comply." Like I've just seen that again and again and again. Get them on your team and then they're happy to uh adapt.
Yeah, and I think you're part of a startup as well. I guess the commercial concrete industry.
Nope, no, I'm not.
Oh, I must have read it wrong. I thought construction technology startup focused on the commercial concrete industry. That's something else.
I oh yeah, that was the I mentioned like the flying around and working with
Oh, that was that
yeah,
part of it.
that was that. Yep.
Got it. Awesome. Okay. Well, what sort of trends do you see? I mean, you're on social. I mean, like you said, we talked about, having sort of knowing a few of the people, but I mean, how do you approach that with social and all the other stuff you're doing?
What do you mean by trends? I just want to make sure I can
I
hear this
mean,
properly.
what sort of changes do you see? I mean, in the industry as we're moving forward.
It's funny. I was talking to a guy yesterday. There is this article that came out that I'm sure you've seen. It was like a Wall Street Journal article talking about how Gen Z is the tool belt generation, is what they've coined it. And he made the point, and I completely agree that it's a cool nod to see a mainstream media outlet like the Wall Street Journal talking about this finally. You know, after many of us have been beating this drum for well, it feels like a decade. You know, 5 years, anyways. talking about getting more people into the trades and things. Uh, Now it finally hits the mainstream, but it's like this is just barely the beginning, and it's not like the work is done and we wash our hands, we keep going. Like there's a tremendous amount of people who will be leaving the industry, retiring out, and there's people not like there's not people coming in to backfill it, and it's only getting worse as time goes on. So as far as trends go, what I'm seeing is companies that take uh, marketing, let's call it, they take marketing seriously, both for their projects and for getting customers, but also for attracting people. They're just in such a better spot right now, uh, and attracting people to solve today's problems. But they have like a foundation that's built that's going to serve them well for years to come. If they're just getting on board now, or they're not on board yet, they're not on social, and they don't have their people talking on social and talking about how challenges that they're facing or attracting the next generation and this sort of thing. Like if they're not doing that now, they're going to be playing catch up in the future. And so, yeah, the trend I see is the companies that are talking talking about what's possible, talking about opportunities, talking about challenges, that are very active on social and meeting the next generation where they are. They're in a way better spot already, and I believe they will be far into the future.
Yeah. Um, so, it's one thing for a company to release, stuff and interface, but how do you think about like employees, right? Because social is business, it could be personal, right? And I know some companies are a little worried about the communication that occurs there. Any guidance, suggestions you commonly give to companies that are trying to create a understanding or policy around that?
And specifically, are you asking about having their
Social.
employees
Social,
posting
yeah.
on social?
Yeah, posting what's appropriate, what's not, what's work, what's not. I don't know. Like what conversations have you had around those type of topics?
It's funny. I've met and even worked with companies who are very gun shy on getting their people sharing, and it's like the classic argument that if they if all of a sudden you see a foreman or a superintendent posting on the internet, you're our competitor. You're gonna go poach him, and then and then now we're hosed. Not only did our foreman end up leaving, but now he's kind of exposed what's going on in real life, and then he left, and so that's all obvious and out in the open. I don't think that's the right mindset unless you just have a terrible company. Like if you have a terrible company, then yes, you should stay off of social. Absolutely. If you're constantly hurting people on the job site or those sorts of things, yeah, like keep it quiet and fix that first. But otherwise, like there's been so much good that has come out of companies that I've seen that encourage their people to talk about what's actually going on the job site, in the office, uh, every day. And there's like there's like such limited downside compared to the upside. It's like this. It's crazy to me that in 2024 we're still talking about the value of social media at, for construction. It's bananas. This has been a decade. This is probably close to 15 years now that this has been a real thing. And it's like, this is how the world is. And it's how the world has been for 7, 10, 15, maybe 15 years. So,
20
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Which is
yeah, exactly.
crazy. I joined LinkedIn in like 2004. So
That's bananas. That is bananas. I was in like seventh grade. I
I sold.
wasn't going to say that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
no, that makes sense. I like it. Like you said, I mean, that's you just be a good company, right? So
Start there. Yeah.
I
And
love.
then
What other sort of tips do you sort of give these owners in terms of things they can improve?
so there's two things. One is especially the companies that I work with. So I work with mostly companies related to excavation, landscaping, utilities. Um, and a lot of the companies I work with do less than $10 million a year. So kind of the 1 to 10 range. And it's because of the issues that I'm trying to solve. If I go try to solve this at a $100 million company, it's just not it. They've had to master that a long time ago. Whereas this is like my zone. This is what I'm already good at. This is how I like my experience, and so I can go in and help. Um, the first thing I'll say is that when it comes to tracking everything in your business, it always feels like, or it seems like to the companies that I talk to, it seems like this massive undertaking, this huge, formidable undertaking that they have to go try to solve this big old problem. So how do I start tracking more accurately and then putting out more accurate estimates? Uh, but it's an evolution. And this is the tip that I would give that I've seen again and again. It's an evolution. So what that means is you don't need to have everything solved today. You don't need to be tracking to the dollar or to the cent on every level in your company today. You don't need that. You just need to get a little better right now. And it's like you could so a little bit better is maybe you start tracking your fuel more accurately, or maybe maybe we start tracking equipment hours now. We weren't before, and now we're going to start tracking equipment hours to projects. It's like this evolution, and then you'll blink, and 2 years has gone by, and all of a sudden you have this whole system built that was built over 2 years, but now it works, and now you're where you wanted to be 2 years ago. It was just slow progress every single day. So that's what I would say is not to get frustrated, not to get like all bent out of shape about it, because it's an evolution. It takes time, which is the worst, but it's also what's true. And I've just seen it again and again.
Wonderful. Yeah, great tips. I like it. I mean, it just accumulates, right? So, when you try to get it done all in one day, nothing gets done.
Yeah. The second thing I'll say is there's and this is kind of uh talks I wanted to bring this up because I think it's uh super important, not just for what I'm doing, but for anybody. And you're asking for tips. I think this is a grossly underrated opportunity, is that you should learn from people who are 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. So what can you do to learn from those people? It could be listening to podcasts like this and like many of the people you interview. There's social media. LinkedIn's full of information. YouTube full of information. Also, uh, learning from your peers, being a lot more intentional about it. One of the things that I'm doing right now is, like, I've been asked by the industry, by people, to start these peer groups and get people together. And I kind of play the role of facilitator, get the right people together because I know people all over the place. Get these contractors together and have them share openly industry secrets. Really, it's just process, it's tools that they've found useful, it's mindsets, it's approaches for how you sell projects, how you build your team. uh, and so I'm putting these peer groups together. If people are interested, they can join a peer group, and it's kind of bracketed by revenue, so you don't have a $600,000 a year company talking to $100 million a year company, and vice versa. It's like, learn from people who are just a couple steps ahead of you in some area. So if a $4 million contractor can learn from a $7 million contractor, and they can pick up tips, hey, here's bumps in the road that we hit. We were just there 2 years ago. Here's what you're going to run into. Those kinds of things can be super, super valuable and can just save you gobs and gobs of time and headache. So whether it's listening to podcasts or joining a peer group or just shooting a note on LinkedIn to somebody who seems like is kind of in your zone and in just maybe a couple steps ahead of you in some area, that's so unbelievably valuable. Keeps you from having to smack your head against the wall and learn all these lessons the hard way.
Yeah, very nice. You mentioned podcasts and learning from others. where do you go to learn?
So I run every day, and I plug in my little headphones and I listen to podcasts. I'm a big podcast guy. I also listen to audiobooks, and um, and then I try to get around and spend a lot of time on the phone with people who are doing what I'm doing, are my customers, are future customers, are just like in this zone, in this space. It's stuff like this. It's like maybe I can learn things, maybe I can pick up, maybe we have a relationship, and then all of a sudden, like I'm seeing I'm seeing like people 10 years ago that I met, like that are now jumping in to help, or are giving me advice, or are there to point me in a direction. It's like that's super valuable if you can get out of your own way enough to be like yeah, be willing to forego your immediate need to just build a relationship with people, and then I can call you in a decade and be like, "Hey, I got this issue, maybe you can help." That's super valuable. So I highly encourage people to be more intentional about that. It seems like unless you have a nature where you're just automatically like your answer to every question is like, who can I call? Unless you have that, you got to do it on purpose. I just super encourage people to build relationships with others that are in their sphere. You can learn so much. But also, you should run and you should have listen to podcasts all the time, like this one.
There you go. Appreciate it. Hey, Benjamin, is there anything that I missed or you wanted to share?
I did want to share about the peer groups. I was able to, so appreciate you asking about that. That's kind of like the next big thing, and it kind of came up out of nowhere. Companies reaching out to me, asking me to put them together, and I'm like, okay, we'll do. So now I'm like taking that seriously, and I'm going to go down this track to try to build more community in this industry. But other than that, no, this is awesome stuff, and I appreciate you asking.